Welcome to the Clear the Shelf podcast with Chris and Chris, the show that meets at the intersection of education and entertainment to discuss online arbitrage, retail arbitrage, wholesale, and all facets of selling on Amazon. We'll bring you news, tactics, strategies, insights, stories, and interviews to help you grow your Amazon business. And now, here are your hosts, Chris Grant and Chris Rasick. What's up, Amazon sellers, and welcome back to the Clear the Shelf podcast with myself and my pestiferous co-host, Chris Rasick. You know, there are two complaints that seem to be universal among Amazon sellers. The first is that they wish the war chest had a bit more lucre in it. That is to say, everyone feels as if they could be a bit more flush with capital. Needed to make that a bit simpler for those of you in Ann Arbor to understand. The second is a lack of space. It's even a bit of a trope, especially in Q4, that inventory, shipping supplies, labels, printers, and everything else end up spilling out into the house, often to a spouse's dismay, as sellers that are operating out of a spare bedroom or a garage just run out of room. Heck, I've found more than one errant release strip in my bed, not knowing it made its way there attached to a sock. And so today, we're going to try to help you hold back the tsunami of supplies that can overwhelm even the most supportive of spouses and make the most of selling from small spaces. But before we get started, you know the drill. This show is not free. We take several minutes to get ready for each episode. So if you get something from this show, do us a favor, hit the like button, hit subscribe wherever you're listening, or drop a quick comment. The only way that we can grow and get this show to more people is by showing the platforms that you want to hear and see more of what we're doing. And the best way to do that is to interact. And of course, we'll keep showing up and bringing you more information. All right, let's go ahead and let's dive in. You and I have both worked from small spaces. Now, I know we both have prep centers now for online arbitrage, but you still do some retail arbitrage. I try not to do much retail arbitrage, but there was a time when that was a majority of the business. I mean, to the tune of I was renting U-Hauls trailers because we were just running out of room in my truck. And I had to keep the space small. Heck, there was times when we were getting U-Haul box trucks to go pick up gaylords of books and then trying to figure out how to put them into my one-car garage to be able to go through. And so we've done some work out of small spaces. And I think if you're strategic, I think it can be an advantage because you learn how to get lean, even if you don't necessarily set out to be lean. And then when you do get some space, well, I think you maybe forget a little while, but then you start taking over that space and you realize, wow, I really need to go back to what I was implementing before to make the most of this larger space that I have now. So I know we've got a ton of tips, and we should dive into them. Chris, I was thinking maybe you could start with kind of the where we should start when we are working with a small space.
Yeah, let's start things off. Despite what you may have heard, arbitrage is not dead. It is alive and well. And when we were initially talking about this episode and thinking about what we wanted to talk about, I remembered back to the period of time where I transitioned from prepping everything in-house before I got my first prep center. And this is true if you're handling everything in-house and then prior to or during a transition to a prep center. And if you're keeping any kind of percentage of it to yourself, or if you're doing like I'm doing now, where it's a portion of it's retail arbitrage and then another portion of it is online arbitrage, and the prep center handles that. There is a trade-off even if you're doing online arbitrage before you go to a prep center, there's you lose some speed when you take
Mhm.
on a prep center. It's I don't have many bad things to say about a prep center, as long as you get a good one, a reputable one. But that is one of the aspects. Even if you're doing OA, if you're doing it all in house, you're going to be a lot faster. Because there's a period of time where if you're using a prep center, you're going to have to send it. There's going to be the transit period of time, but then once it gets there, it has to be checked in and then it has to be prepped. And typically that's going to be at least a few days, right?
Mhm.
So you can see different scenarios where retaining the speed of prepping everything in house has its advantages. And obviously, retail arbitrage, vast majority of the time, that's going to be your only option is prepping it yourself. So, um, we've heard a lot of stories. A lot of the interviews that we do, it's interesting to hear where people start out. Um, you hear these stories about one bedroom apartments and prepping, and uh, it's easy to outgrow it. But necessity is the mother of invention. So
Mhm.
you become you'll become much more efficient if you have to be. Once you
Mhm.
start generating the kind of numbers that you're shooting for and scaling up. So basically, we like you said, it's all about efficiency. So what you want to do is assess what available space that you have.
Mhm.
Um, and this is going to vary, quite a bit. This is going to be a very personal, it's a case by case situation, but truly assess what you have available to you. Whether it be part of your garage. Um, if you're, I know my garage, it's not the driest place. It's not, the climate isn't ideal. So I couldn't store, especially if you're doing any kind of grocery or anything, any perishables or any kind of sensitive products. The garage may not be the only part of it, so some of it's going to have to come in the house, or if you don't have a garage. um, and basement has same issues. There's if you have a basement, the climate down there isn't always ideal, unless you have a nice finished portion. So basically you want to see what's there, see what you can use. I know my situation, I have several different places that I've ended up using, and it kind of ends up being a rotation. The area of the house or the portion of the house that I'm using for inventory, um, essentially becomes its own section of the process. You kind of bring stuff in and it kind of moves its way around, most of it, until it eventually gets out the door. So um, you want to try to, obviously the key is to maximize what you can use. I don't know. I lost count. I'm not sure how many of those Rubbermaid or Sterilite tubs I have now. I'm not sure if it's in the three figures yet or not. It's got to be getting close. But if I had to guess, I'm somewhere in the 70 to 80 range of different sizes. Um, and obviously those can be transported to different areas. So um, there are a couple different stacks of those around the house as we speak. So yeah, so basically you need to see what you're able to use, and what
Mhm.
areas are in play, what areas are not in play in your house. What to do? Any idea what the maximum tub count was for you, Chris?
I was never a big tub user. Uh,
Okay.
in our garage, we had when I was working out of the garage at my house in Ohio. It came with some built-in shelves, and so we used those. Those were floor to ceiling, and I mean they were like 30 years old. I was always sure that one day I was going to come out and everything was going to be on the floor. uh, and and then outside of that, we also put in some other shelving, some rolling shelving. And then
Mhm.
when we moved to Florida, and when retail arbitrage got really big, I was basically working out of about 250 square feet of office space, So it was both my office where I'd record videos, but then it was also inventory storage. And so I had three rolling racks, which are I still have. They're out in the garage now. They just don't hold inventory anymore. Uh, and we would utilize those. And then we ended up using some floor space in front of the racks as well. But I've got some good stories.
Hey, Amazon sellers, are you tired of juggling multiple tools to manage your FBA business? Well, say goodbye to the chaos and hello to Boxum, the all in one software that streamlines your shipments, inventory, and profitability tracking in just a few clicks. With Boxum, you'll cut your shipment time in half, gain real time insights into your business, and keep your inventory under control, all from one simple, intuitive dashboard. Don't waste time. Try Boxum today and take your Amazon FBA game to the next level. Check it out over at cleartheshelf.com/Boxum and start your 14-day free trial now.
We tried to make it as lean as absolutely possible when we were doing some heavy retail arbitrage. And one of the best ways is to like optimize that vertical space, like I talked about. Rolling shelves are absolute lifesavers, or a wall mounted shelving system, like whatever you can use. I really liked the rolling shelves because we could, move them in front of a computer if we needed to. We could put big things on the bottom. It was nice. Um, we didn't never really used like stacking containers or Rubbermaid containers. But one other thing that we used is, and I know you've talked about this on one of the previous podcasts, is uh, you hang some of your dunnage.
Mhm.
Well, I bought one of those. You ever seen someone who has like a net in the corner of their room where they put like plush or teddy bears, stuff like
Yep.
that? I bought one of those, and that's where our dunnage would go. All the air pillows, all the dunnage that would come from different stores. And I don't know how many people know this, but if you're doing heavy retail arbitrage, there is no rule against using stores' plastic bags as dunnage. If you take several of them and stuff them into a one plastic bag, tie it up, it works very nicely as dunnage. So we always made sure to keep all of those as well, to be able to utilize those, and everything just went up in the corner so we could utilize as much vertical space as absolutely possible. Um, and then uh, you don't just need to use vertical space for your inventory or your dunnage or anything like that, but we actually hung on the wall our FNSKU printer. So it was hung on the wall, and there was a little shelf right above it where we'd put extra labels. We were using a Dymo, so the labels stayed inside of the unit itself. We also would hang all of our poly bags. So, on the outside of, say, hospital rooms or at a doctor's office, they've got those large hanging like folder carriers on the wall.
Mhm.
So we bought several of those, and we would put our poly bags in those of every size and mark them so we knew exactly where everything went. Uh, on the wall was also a above the prep table was there was a space for the Ronsonol lighter fluid. There was a space for makeup sponges, which if nobody's ever done this before, this may be one of the greatest hacks for removing pesky price stickers. It's not a heat gun with a Scotty peeler. It's Ronsonol lighter fluid on a makeup sponge, and you just put that on top of the sticker for 30 seconds, and it basically dissolves all of the glue, and it pulls off really nicely. And then you don't have any stickiness left over, and it doesn't leave any scent or ruin cardboard and things like that. You're not going to melt through plastic like you will with a heat gun. Um, but we kept all of our tools nice and neat, all on the wall, so that someone could sit at the prep table. Probably should have made it a standing prep table, but the guy who worked for me at the time, he was he was always stoned, like all the time. So I wasn't sure of him standing all the time. As long as he wasn't falling asleep, I was all right with him sitting. Um,
Yeah.
but we would try to optimize as much vertical space as we could to try to keep stuff off the ground, and give ourselves as much work area as possible. Uh, and we'll talk about some more things here coming up as well. But there's a lot of different things you can do.
Yeah, I have another good thing that seems to work well for the products that we tend to stock. I actually have a right over there. I have a shoe rack, and it hangs. It's a back of the door shoe rack, and it's just kind of got mesh pockets all across, and that's where I keep tape, extra tape, hazmat stickers, SKU label rolls. I just kind of line them all up, and it fits perfectly. That and if you have closet space, if you've ever seen those sweater organizers,
Hmm.
or closet organization in general, there's a bunch of a lot of innovative stuff. Where they're kind of maximizing the space that you can use in your closets. But I know Walmart sells them. They're super cheap. It's basically just a Velcro fabric that goes over the hanger, the hanging bar, and it's only going to be so wide, but it's going to have fabric pockets. It's going to have kind of a firm bottom, and you can store a lot of stuff. Yeah, thinking like poly bags, if you wanted, you could even organize it by size, using one of those sweater organizers in your closet. Because I have a coat closet over here, um, that I've commandeered a portion of it for supplies as well. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff, as far as organization goes, that we can kind of repurpose into space saving, um, prepping tools and
Hmm.
supplies.
And look outside. Like if you're looking for organization tips, a lot of people might go and Google, what are some warehouse organization tips, and those may not be what you need. I actually got some of our best ideas for organization in a small area from like mom blogs. So I'll give you an
Hmm.
example here. When my son Wyatt was a baby, we had a changing table in his room, of course, with one of those pillows and the little cover over it that takes care of blowouts and you can take off and wash. And we wanted to make it so that changing a diaper was as simple as possible. Everything was in reach. And so we took one of those, not a cork board, but one of those pieces of wood that have all the holes, drilled into it. I'm
Hmm.
not sure what they're called.
Pegboard, I think.
Pegboard, yeah. So we took a pegboard and we painted it white and put it up against the wall, and then we had all of these little sections. And so the wipes were right here, and right above that was a thing full of diapers. And you've got your 72 different diaper creams in another little area, and then some spit up rags, and we had all these things laid out right there. So you could do a tactical diaper change as quickly as possible. Uh, and that was found from a mom blog, and we took that and used it in the small space that we had to prep in, because it was just so damn convenient to have everything right there. And it was, if we wanted to move something around, well, all you got to do is take out the hooks and move it to another area, or put in something else. Like it was efficient, it was multi-purpose, it was great. And there are a lot of those kinds of hacks that you can find across mom blogs and Pinterest boards and things like that, that you're not going to find on some Six Sigma or lean style YouTube video or blog.
Yeah. You know what I want? I want one of those old uh laundromat carts.
Yes.
You know, that'd be because I actually I have a cheap rolling hanger, but it doesn't have the basket in the bottom. But you know,
Mm-hmm.
I'll put craft paper and bubble wrap. You know, I'll just kind of pop the one side and slide those rolls in there so I can hang those and have those off the ground and get at them easily.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the yeah, it kind of kind of similar to how you kind of change the way you look when you become an Amazon seller and you kind of
Mm-hmm.
assess shopping differently. It's the
Oh
same
yeah.
thing you have to kind of do with organizational stuff, you know, and
Mm-hmm.
use the room that you're going to use. You know, like if you're going to use your garage primarily, check out garage organization stuff. You know, there are
Mm-hmm.
racks that you can actually hang from the ceiling, which would be great storage for boxes and stuff like that. That you need to That's better to keep off the ground. Um, yeah, mom blogs. That's a great idea. You know, because they all sorts of more pockets the better with a lot of the stuff involved with organizing baby rooms and baby supplies.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you just kind of expand, kind of change your change the way you look at stuff and find ways to possibly repurpose stuff and unknown or surprising topics that before you got in the game you never
Yeah.
would have thought of. So
One of the other things that comes to mind is make sure that you're looking for the places that you wouldn't necessarily think to use.
mhm.
And here's what I mean by this. So, yeah, we got to a point where it made sense to just have one of those big rolls of craft paper. Have you ever ordered one of those?
No, I
No.
am
So,
still with the smaller ones.
I mean, we had like it was big. Yeah, it wasn't one of the 100-pound ones, but I mean, this thing weighed a good 30, 40 pounds. And I bought one of the craft paper holders so that you could just take some off and tear it and things like that. But I had no idea, like, where are we going to put this thing? I didn't want to hang it on the wall because of how big it was, and I didn't want to make a mistake and accidentally have it come out of the wall. So we ended up buying. I bought uh, HVAC uh, uh, zip strips. Now, have you ever used an HVAC? I'm sure you've used an HVAC zip strip, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, those things will hold just about anything. So, a couple of those, and we attached it to the side, one of the posts of the rolling cart. Yeah, it wasn't heavy enough to make the cart tip over, especially if we had anything on the cart. But even when it was empty, it would not tip over. And now, not only could it roll around with the cart if necessary, but it was able to utilize a storage area that, like, everyone would have thought was useless. So always be looking for those little areas that you could, stuff one more thing into.
hmm Yep. So and when you're speaking about vertical space, you can kind of manufacture some vertical space too. Um, because you mentioned standing standing prep station.
Hmm.
Um, look into table risers.
Hmm.
Those can be very helpful not only to put you in a better position to save your back as you're prepping this stuff, but you're also creating more space underneath the table. Like I have, you can't see it, but back here, the table I have is actually height adjustable. It has a couple different settings, and I could actually raise that up. And you can actually put a filing cabinet underneath that, to hold different supplies. And like you can see over here, I got like one of the small little drawers, that are easily stackable, and that's got Scotty peelers and smaller poly bags in it. So,
Hmm.
you can kind of manufacture your own space. And like the table, the adjustable height, I do use it as a desk, but it's a 6 feet wide desk. I'm only sliding into a smaller portion of that, so I kind of use the edges for extra storage too. So
Mhm. Yeah, speaking of small spaces and putting things where they belong, does the size of the space ever make you choose a certain product to sell over another?
if not directly, it definitely influences stuff I like looking at the stores.
Hmm.
I I don't know for sure, but I certainly think that probably has something to do with why I like beauty so much.
Hmm.
Um, and it's kind of a direct correlation between how easy it is to pack into the boxes too. But definitely the size matters. A lot of the health and beauty items, your shampoos and then obviously beauty as there's just tiny little things. Um, yeah, the size of what you're sourcing definitely has an impact on the space that you have available. Um, so this may be the type of thing where if you're managing a prep center and in-house, um, you could also skew the larger stuff to the prep center, and just kind of pay to have that. Not only are you paying for them to prep it and take care of it, you're paying for them to temporarily store it before they get it
Hmm.
out there. So, but yeah, absolutely. The types of products that you source um, can definitely ease any burdens that you have with a smaller space. Um, and the great thing about beauty is the higher profit margins too. The
Hmm.
stuff goes for good money, so you're not losing anything as far as ROI and the return on your sourcing dollars. So and then obviously the flip side of this goes with almost without saying, you want to avoid bulky and oversized products. Um, I think people with small spaces, you're probably already used to getting stuff out as fast as possible. And if you do get some oversized stuff, or maybe there's some a great deal on a toy or something this time of year in Q4. Like I remember a couple of years ago, Ollie's had these baby dolls that came in its own bathtub. And they were great money, um, but they were bulky.
Hmm.
It was, and I didn't. The one version of the doll, I don't know if the ASIN just dog paged or what, but I got stuck with them, and that's when you really pay the price for not sourcing appropriately sized inventory for the space that you're working out of, because those baby dolls just took up so much space in a corner for so long before I could get rid of them. So yeah, absolutely, you can control how much of a headache your small space is by the products that you choose to source.
Hmm. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it was on purpose or if it was, maybe a little bit of the eye roll that I would occasionally get from my UPS guy. But we did. I flipped some water coolers one time. And bought them from Kroger and had to Frankenbox them. There was no box that would fit it. Send them into FBA, and taking those things out, having my UPS guy come up and kind of give me a look and a sigh when he had to put them in the back of his truck. And then I also sold some. They were these plastic ponies that you could ride on. They were very, very hot several years ago, but they were massive. They went into an extra large um, uh, Home Depot box, and we were merchant fulfilling them, and it was miserable, just miserable. And so, after that, we really started to just focus on nothing bigger than a board game, if at all possible. And there's so much more volume that you can do in terms of number of units. With bottles of vitamins, bottles of shampoo, makeup products. And then if you do keep it, smaller, like you can go with like boxes of home goods and kitchen things. Like there are plenty of we used to sell a lot of uh, silverware that you'd buy from places like TJ Maxx and stuff like that. And I mean, that was all great, you know, but it was just everything bigger. It's just, it can be miserable if you don't know what you're doing. So, but we should also talk, since this is Q4, is we should probably talk a little bit about organizational systems. Like if you're going to do any sort of serious merchant fulfilling, or if you're gonna, do any serious eBay on your own. And Walmart right now, if you're selling on Walmart, yes, there is fulfilled by Walmart, but there is a lot of sellers who are handling all of that themselves. And that means you basically need to store the inventory, which means you need to know how many you have in stock and where to find it. And I've always been fascinated by this because I know some people, especially larger eBay sellers, who move things a bit slower. They implement a SKU system, and I don't know what whatever their SKU system is. Maybe it's where they bought it, or maybe it's just something that's randomly generated. But they will package the item ready to be shipped, mark it with the SKU, and then they throw that SKU into, say, a storage container, one of those Rubbermaids that Chris was talking about. That, let's say the SKU starts with M. Well, then that goes into the M storage container. And then in their listing, they'll have their SKU somewhere so they know exactly where to go look for that when it's time to ship it out. Well, we would do something similar during heavy merchant fulfilled seasons, heavy Q4. Um, there were years where we'd be selling, several hundred units of board games and things like that. And so, as soon as we brought them into the house, rather than waiting for them to sell to package it up, is we would just package them immediately and put them on a shelf so that we could grab one, throw a label on it, and it's ready to go out the door. And we implemented our own sort of SKU system. It was just a Sharpie, and we wrote on the envelope or the box, say WM for Walmart, and then dash, whatever the item was. And we knew, okay, this is where it is. We know exactly how much it weighs, etc., so that we can ship it out. Now, it will suck a little bit if somebody orders 2 or 3 units and you've got to take them and repackage them, but that happens a little less frequently. So learn how to do that. Setting up a SKU system is not too hard. Can also, color code if you need to. There are tracking tools, for unlisted, what they call unlisted inventory. It's really just merchant fulfilled inventory in places like Inventory Lab. It's If you get really big, which we're talking about small spaces, so this shouldn't be the case. There are other software for tracking inventory that you store yourself, but probably not going to really be something that you need as someone in a smaller space. But I can tell you, packing ahead of time, if you're doing heavy FBM, and having a little SKU system ready to go, will make your life so much easier.
Yeah, this is where a lot of I used to watch a lot of professional eBay on YouTube shows. Um,
Hmm.
Shout out to Shed Flips and Cincinnati Picker. Um, but they would that's where I got a lot of the ideas as far as storage goes. Um, and you can you can adapt it to how you need it to adapt it. Now those guys use Rubbermaid tubs, and they basically label all the tubs. And they just kind of take a piece of paper and tape a piece of paper, or write on it with Sharpie. And it's just they use. I think both of those guys use a simple kind of A1, A2. So they go A through 9, and then they'll go B1 through 9. And they just have these series of tubs, and they just stack them on the shelves, right? And these tubs kind of fit in pretty nicely into some of these rolling carts. You can do the same thing with inventory that you're purchasing. And I mean, unless you're extremely efficient, where you're packing up what you bought, same day or next day, chances are, if you're that efficient, you're probably not running into storage issues. But if you need to do something similar to, uh, like the SKU labels, you can bring stuff in, and you could even organize the inventory on the date that it comes in. You can organize it by store. If you're heavy on a couple different stores, you could have shelves that are dedicated to Walmart or, whatever, Target, wherever you're shopping from. You could have shelves and areas dedicated to, some of the retail stores if you're doing retail arbitrage, and you're bringing that stuff in. You can organize by category. If you're concentrating in just a couple categories, you can have certain areas for toys, certain areas for beauty. um, there's a bunch of different ways that you can do this, and this is where those rolling carts come in handy. If you're able to have those, you could even take the carts. I know I like the ones from Sam's Club. Those are pretty heavy duty. um, the big heavy metal shelves, but they're on like industrial size casters. They have big old wheels on them. So if you're able to utilize something like that, you could even put the inventory that you bought on Monday on a shelf, and you can wheel it to the back and then bring up the stuff you bought Sunday. And that's stuff that you're packing up, and you can kind of just rotate the stuff in and out, and have it where you need. So yeah, the SKU, it makes things a heck of a lot easier, because let's face it, I mean, once you start buying a certain amount of stuff, if you just kind of set something down going, now I'll remember where that is, it won't be
No, you
long
won't.
before, yeah, you're going to completely forget where you put something. And
Yeah.
that's miserable, especially if you're doing something, if you're doing FBM, and you get an order, and you have time frames that you need to meet. The last thing you want to do is be scouring multiple rooms, or scouring across an entire garage, whatever you're working for, just frantically looking for something that you've misplaced.
hmm I I want to touch on workflow a little bit, because workflow is, I think it's one of those things that it may not get it thought about quite a bit. Now, we've talked about it a bit with Kim and Perry. Perry is he may be one of the best minds when it comes to workflow, and the Amazon space. But I think we had it down to as much of a science as my pea brain is able to make something. And I'm just curious, like, what does your workflow look like?
Well, mine's not necessarily a good example. there's there's a lot of efficiency that I could pick up. Um, Basically, it's a I rely on tubs, and it's mainly, the ones with the two wheels on the back. I get the extra long ones, with the handle, so that I can wheel those in and out. And it's essentially a matter of, if it needs to be prepped, it's in one room, and then it goes into the tub. Series of tub. You can take it out of the tub, you prep it, you put it back into the tub, you put a lid on, stack the next one on top. You just kind of create a stacking process of mobile tubs. And then once everything's prepped, it'll come in here, and I'll set up the scale and whatnot, and start organizing my boxes and my shipments. But it's a terrible process. I don't, there's there's very little that the audience can take, from that. So
I know I know that I like to think we had a fairly streamlined workflow. Uh, my area was set up like when we were doing heavy retail arbitrage. Our area was set up kind of like an L. We had the prep area here, and then my desk was way over in the corner, and we had another desk for some online arbitrage. But essentially, when we would back that U-Haul trailer into the driveway, we would unpack everything. We'd take all the bags out of the U-Haul trailer, and they go right inside. Now, doing retail arbitrage, I would highly suggest that you are using some sort of solution to be able to create buy lists while you're shopping. So that was the very first thing. While we were out shopping, we used a scanning app. We would scan the item. If we decided to buy it, it was going on the buy list right then and there. And any good scanning software with a buy list feature, if you're buying, so we would often, I don't really have a name for it, but we would hunt the same product at multiple stores. So we go to TJ Maxx #1 and we find, this makeup palette that is just absolute winner. And we'd say, okay, we're buying, 5 of these, but now this is on our hit list. And every single other store that we go to, we can buy, as many as we want of these as long as the price is under X. And if you buy them again and hit the buy and add to buy list, it should automatically kind of go into the same area. All right. So that's what we would do. And then we would bring everything back to the house. We'd unload that trailer. All the bags would go in front of the prep station. And as the items are destickered, they get put up on the shelf. So we'd unpack the bags, would stack things up, a little bit at a time, de-sticker, and then everything gets its place on the shelf, everything next to each other. Uh, After everything is de-stickered and ready to go, everything gets recounted to make sure that the buy list is correct. And then finally, FNSKU labels get printed in batches, and they're put on each and every single product. And then finally, the shipment is made. All the items are put into the boxes that Amazon wants them put in, and then it's out the door. We tried to touch the items as infrequently as possible. Uh, were we great at it? No, probably not, because essentially we were touching it when it came into the house, while it got destickered, putting it onto the shelf, putting an FNSKU label on it, and then putting it into a box. There was likely a better solution, uh, because I think Kim and Perry, like, they touched the items like 3 times or something. Well, we were touching it at least 5. Um, what I should have done is I probably should have created like a spaghetti map of the workflow. And we'll talk about spaghetti maps here in a little bit. But when you think about your workflow, I think you've really got to figure out, like, what makes sense. What is going to allow me the least amount of steps, what's going to allow me to do the least amount of bending, because you want to make sure you're not getting hurt. Number one, when you get to be our age and you're picking up a 39 pound box and taking it from the floor to a desk and back to the floor, that's a lot of opportunity to throw your back out, especially when you're the age when you can do it looking left too fast. Uh, and But you also want to just try to get things done as quickly as possible. And a spaghetti map, it can help you with that. So we'll talk about how to figure all that stuff out here in just a little bit as well. But um, Chris, have you ever used any external storage?
I haven't. I had, but I've thought quite a bit about it. Um, I always kind of I go in these waves to where I kind of fall in love with retail arbitrage all over again,
Hmm.
and and or when it usually I'm ramping up eBay at the same time, so it's like, man, I should get I should think about some sort of extra storage, or it's easy to project myself needing extra storage. Um, so yeah, I've had all sorts of ideas, whether it be different size sheds. Um, I have a city lot, so I don't the backyard and side yard can only accommodate so much. But but I've thought about that. I have like an old basically a toy trailer. It was used as a landscaping trailer at one point in time, but yeah, it's big enough to where you walk in and it's got it's dry, and um, you can kind of utilize it, and then it's fairly mobile too. So there's some opportunities there with different size sheds on your property. And then I've made a bunch of calls, um, and this is kind of interesting. I didn't realize there was so much parity in pricing, but I have looked at storage units. Um, and I know the friend of the show, Corey Ganem, he tells the story of him working out of a storage unit. But yeah, I've gone around town and I've looked at several of them, trying to find ones that had power to make life a little bit easier. It's not necessary. You can use a hotspot on your phone, and extension cords, generators if you had to. But yeah, I've entertained the idea of a storage unit before. Did you ever did you ever outgrow the garage and have to do something?
I used a storage unit one time, and then I never wanted to use one again because it was associated with probably my worst mistake when it came to reselling. I got the storage unit because I bought an entire truckload of liquidation from, of all places, Kmart. Thank you for listening to the Clear the Shelf podcast. My magnanimous co host, Chris Rasick, has put together a gift for you for being a listener. It's called the Monthly Goal Tracking Spreadsheet, and it's free. The spreadsheet will help you break down and track how much you've purchased, which should be a leading indicator of how much you will sell, and then you'll be able to track how much you've sold as well as your estimated monthly profit on a daily basis. This will all feed into the daily averages so you can ensure that you're on track to meet your goals each and every month. Grab it for free today over at cleartheshelf.com/goal-tracking. Thanks again for being a listener. Now back to the show. And I thought that it was going to be an absolute winner, and all the pictures were really good. And then when it got delivered, it was literal garbage, is what it was. It was
Mm.
just absolute trash. Um, and that was all in a storage unit. Tried to go through it for about a week and realized there was nothing that was really salvageable. We ended up, selling it to someone for less than 50% of what I paid so that they could take it off to a flea market and just get rid of this stuff. Uh, but I definitely think that there is a time and a place for storage units. If I could go back and do it again, I probably would do retail arbitrage out of a storage unit. Especially if I could get a one of those storage units that has interior uh, units and power, especially because it is nice to keep things out of the house. It gives you a place where this is work and this is home, instead of always having the work right there. And I think sometimes, no matter how supportive the spouse is, there becomes a moment when you have to do something else. Um, which is one of the other reasons I'm just a big proponent of using FBA. It's like a free storage unit, as long as you can get things into them as quickly as possible. One of the things that I think I've seen pictures of a lot of people's spaces. I think it's incredibly important to keep a clean and organized space where you're going to work. And it gets really easy when you're tearing strips off of poly bags and stickers off of products and things like that, to just let them fall on the floor like peanut shells uh, at a CD bar or something like that. And I think that that is a really, really bad thing to do. Uh, I think that you work better when the place is decluttered and organized, and when you can come in to a space that has nothing on it, a workstation where everything is put back where it belongs, and things like that. It starts your day off much better. Um, I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's important all the time, but it's even more important if you're dealing with small spaces. Um, because here's the thing: you don't want clutter to slow you down, um,
Mhm.
and that's what happens with me. Is there because I have a lot of convertible space, right? Is what I like to call it, and it's basically multi-purpose areas. Like the table behind me, that's boxes are prepped there. Um, but then I also take the quick little um, project board from Dollar Tree, and it becomes my photo station, right? And
Mhm.
there's a ring light over there, so I need to use that for multiple things. And then it's also a laptop table if I'm deciding to work from over there. I have another project going on that I need to use that I can't use this computer. So what I find myself is, especially when I hit the lull in motivation or a lull in energy, uh, if I haven't cleaned the space off, say I still have my photo stuff up, uh, I'm a little less likely to package up that FBA shipment, right? Because in my mind, it's an obstacle because I have to take the photo stuff down and then I have to get the scale out and I have to get, and move the tape gun over there. I have to convert it first. So I'm creating a barrier, which is bigger mentally than it is physically, obviously, but it is a barrier. And if it catches me on the right day, I may push a task that I really shouldn't be pushing, and I'll kind of just, and then my whole day kind of gets I'll start feeling guilty knowing that there's something I have to do, and it kind of hangs in the back of my head, like that feeling from working a day job that I try to get away from, the deadlines and looming deadlines, just kind of right in the back of your head, that you feel like there's something you should be doing, and I hate that feeling. Um, so yeah, and it gets into, kind of doing, not to make this overly deep, but there's a concept of future self, past self, present self, and future self. And basically keeping the area tidy is doing a favor to your future self.
Mhm.
And the better you can treat your future self, the more your present self is going to like your past self. Um, if that makes any sense. But um, yeah, keeping it organized is going to let you, especially when you're small space and you're transitioning, it's going to help you move to the next project faster. So it's extremely important. I wish my actions indicated how important I know it truly is, but it's not always that case. But yeah, it's crucial.
Yeah. It, one of the There's something cool nowadays that was not around when I first started working out of a small space, and that is AI. And I think that there is some massive opportunity, and I don't know how many people are taking advantage of this, uh, but there's a big opportunity to take advantage of the tools that we have available to us nowadays to be able to come up with like learning what spaghetti models are. Well, if you aren't sure what a spaghetti map is or a spaghetti model, sorry, that's for a spaghetti model is for weather, but a spaghetti map is for like warehouse. Well, if you don't know what that is, you can easily go to Perplexity and have Perplexity explain it to you like you're in fifth grade and give you examples and then have links out directly to blog posts or information on the web that can teach you more, including videos and things like that. But one of the other things that we can do is imagine taking an hour or two and measuring your work area and measuring the size of your workstations and then uploading all of that information into a chat gpt or a claude or a perplexity and saying, hey, listen, I have an office or a garage that is this space. I have a table that I want to use for prepping that is this size. I have a desk that is this size. Tell me how I should organize it for maximum operational efficiency while essentially running an inventory based business. Even just say Amazon FBA. AI knows what that is, and it's going to spit out to you, what it has learned from scouring the internet, uh, and be able to help you. It's going to allow you to get ideas for new ways to store your items, or new ways to take advantage of vertical space. uh, those things didn't exist 5 years ago, and they do now. I'm surprised more people are not doing this. I haven't really heard of anybody. No one's like, "Hey, here's exactly what I'm doing to make sure that I can, uh, you know, make the most out of the 150 square feet I have for Amazon in my home to do or with ChatGPT." And I think there's so many use cases that uh, that people could probably use it for, and they just aren't.
Yeah, it's and you might have helped a lot of people, just simply by mentioning that, because I'm sure it didn't occur to a lot of people, and I think that's the point that we're at. People are only starting to realize that they can use that, and especially the way the enhancements, something like Perplexity, they've been doing it. I know ChatGPT has that function now, but they'll actually give you the links to the articles that they're pulling the information from. And if you're on the pro plan for Perplexity, they can actually give you shopping items. You can actually
Mhm.
tell them like, "Hey, I'm looking for organizational products," and they can actually send you the links to some of the items that they think might help you. But I think it's a matter of mindset. I don't think it's it hasn't hit the majority yet that this is something available to them that will really help. And this is essentially the argument on why these AIs asking questions to AI, why that's going to take so much market share from Google. Because
Mhm.
it's two separate things. You can Google something and it'll spit back information that it thinks you want to hear, versus asking something like ChatGPT or Perplexity. They'll actually teach you. They'll kind of take it. They'll take that question, and not only will they give you the information, they'll flat out explain it to you. They'll walk you through the process and give you alternatives, and you can follow up, which is
Mhm.
probably the biggest thing that you certainly can't do with Google. You have to try to recreate the first question and create a second layer to the question, where Perplexity or ChatGPT, you can just add the follow up question and it's already reading what came before it, and
Yep.
it'll carry on from there. Um, it
Heck,
goes all the way back to. Sorry, go ahead.
if you don't know what question to ask, you can say that,
Right,
Yeah,
right.
I don't know how to create a prompt to help me organize my workspace. Please help me create a prompt. Like,
Yeah.
it will walk you through every single step, and that's just not something Google can do. Who knows if they're ever going to be able to? They seem to be way behind in the AI race.
Yeah. No, and I mean, it's great. I can't tell you how many times I'm actually telling the AI where they went wrong. Like, no,
Mhm.
you're focusing too much on this aspect. I'm looking for answers, or I'll tell them what portion to remove, and it's because anytime you ask about Amazon FBA, they're gonna throw private label information and stuff like that. Now, so I always kind of have them strip that out, and I'm actually refining the question, and it's getting more and more precise as I keep following up. That's something you can't do with Google. It's the
Mhm.
same thing as when you know, I, I don't know how many years ago, it's probably like 20 plus years ago, when before Amazon became ubiquitous like it is now. It's do you remember the times when you thought it was like a hack, where you're in a store and you're like, "Hey, you take a look and see if you can find it cheaper on Amazon," and
Mhm.
the brick and mortar stores absolutely hated that. But there were a whole lot of people. Certain people caught on quicker, and other people were a little bit slower to realize. I'm thinking about my parents. When I say that, and you could tell them like, "Hey, just pull it up on Amazon. Just take a look. And sure enough, they'd find it cheaper. And oh, I didn't even think about that. So that's kind of the stage that we're in, with things like AI and really getting specific about tailoring your own efficiency in your own spaces like that. So yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah. Um, yeah, kind of, I guess the last thing I want to touch on is how do you scale your business in a small space? Maybe you don't have the opportunity to rent out a storage space. Be honest with you, here in Florida, they're expensive. Like no one has basements, so everyone has a storage space, and they are expensive. Or maybe you're in a place like New York City. A storage place can be hard to come by, and you've got limited space. But I think you can still scale an Amazon business. But I think there's certain things that you've got to make sure that you're doing. And I think one of the big things is going to be turning over your inventory a little bit faster. Now, I don't mean necessarily selling through faster while it's at Amazon if you're utilizing FBA. But what I mean is, and I'm guilty of this, okay, is I'm going to go and I'm going to do some retail arbitrage on Monday. And on Tuesday, I'm going to ship into Amazon. And Tuesday rolls around and it's like, well, I had such a good day yesterday out there shopping. I found so much stuff. Why don't I go out today and do another round of retail arbitrage? And then I'll pack up on Wednesday. Uh, and then Wednesday comes around and it's kind of like, well, yeah, I need to mow the lawn and I need to spend some time with my wife or the kids or my girlfriend. And maybe you have spent some time with your wife and your girlfriend, whatever. But things get in the way and the boring work of prepping and getting things out to Amazon, I have found all too often take a back seat. Um, I know there have been times when I have let things sit for a week before it gets shipped out to Amazon. And now you've got a lot of things that happen. Number one, uh, we're selling on a dynamic marketplace. You have no idea what could happen. A product that is great right now may not be great in 2 weeks. But the other thing is, I mean, there are so many other things that could happen. I remember once I was I was too tired to empty out the my car from a retail shopping trip and or from an RA trip, and that night all of the items were stolen out of the back seat of the car. And those are the kind of things that happen. But you need to get things shipped in as quickly as possible, and you need to be diligent about that. Get things turned over as quickly as possible. The other thing is try to focus on niches that are a bit more high margin and that fit your lifestyle more or your business more. So it's okay if you want to focus on small things and maybe you don't want to do beauty. Trust me, there are a lot of other smaller items that you can sell. And what I mean by that is you could sell and I'm not talking electric hand tools, but you could sell hand tools, screwdrivers and tape measures don't take up a whole lot of space. Neither do, cooking spoons or, I mean, there are over 1 billion products on Amazon. There are a lot of items that are going to be small and higher dollar. Um, any other things that you've got for kind of scaling up a business from a smaller area?
Just that I would mention, you know, a lot of the stuff that we've talked about as far as cash flow, maximizing cash flow, the speed of money, a lot of that translates here, and they're complementary to each other. If you're doing this correctly and you're limited by a small space, so you have to get everything in and out as fast as possible, you're helping yourself with your own cash flow, right? Because that, as long as you have it priced correctly, you're getting that inventory. The turnaround time is as small as possible, so you're going to be able to turn that inventory, and if you stick to it and you stay efficient, you're going to add the amount of turns that you can make in a calendar year, and
Hmm.
that money is going to compound, and you know I think the point is hopefully, the income and the money that you're making makes it so you don't have to work out of such a small space, whether that be a bigger house, or you take your business off site, or who knows, your own warehouse eventually. It depends on how big your dreams are there. um but I would say, pay attention to um you know the cash flow stuff that we've talked about. That'll help you, and even some of the mindset stuff, about staying on task, and not putting stuff off, any of the productivity, the stuff that we've mentioned or alluded to. This all comes into play as far as scaling up, because it's what you want to do is, and we've talked about this in different contexts. We talk about people moving to a prep center as a solution, instead of an efficiency standpoint, right? It's the
Hmm.
same thing like hiring a VA. It's like a lot. Yeah, the wrong way to hire a VA is thinking that the VA is going to solve your sourcing problems, which is obviously incorrect, because you are the trainer of that VA. So you're going to be instilling the same bad habits, or bad lessons that you're working off of. So, um, we always talk about, before you jump to the VA, you have to get into the weeds, and you really have to analyze, take a brutally honest look at your own process, you know, and I mean, we kind of say it as a joke, the self-deprecating stuff, but that's also us being open and honest about our own inefficiencies.
Hmm.
There's a whole lot that I could do to become more efficient, and stuff would sell quicker, and I'd sell more. um and but I'm being honest about it. I'm not going to make an excuse or something like that. And that's kind of what you get into when your space is limited. um you have to be brutally honest. Don't candy coat something, don't make an excuse. It is what it is. We're running our own business, and there's a lot of stuff that we're figuring out on the fly. But guess what? Uh, a lot of the great entrepreneurs do exactly that,
Hmm.
and they just got really good at solving problems quickly. So, um, yeah, it kind of maybe what is that? A more holistic approach to it.
Yeah, I think so. Now,
Yeah,
one
I
other
think that
thing
might help.
too, I think maybe if we want to touch on mindset for just 1 second, is remember that if you are working from a garage, or you know, Saul, friend of the pod, showed a picture where he got his start out of, and um, it was a walk-in utility closet in his first apartment. And
Mhm.
now I don't know what kind of luxury amenities this apartment had a walk-in utility closet, and I gave him a little gruff for that, but that was what he had, and so he used that. But
Mhm.
you're in good company you know if you're starting out in a very small area. Hewlett and Packard started out of a garage. IBM started out of a garage. Microsoft, Apple, Amazon, pretty sure Dell started out of a garage. Like Henry Ford out of a garage. Like there are all these icons that started out of a garage I mean, it's almost a cliche, but
Mhm.
it's something I like to think about. Like, uh, we're in good company by working out of some smaller spaces. And so don't ever let anybody give you, crap for, working in your garage or out of a closet or whatever. Um,
Yeah. I'll take my
now,
garage over a middle manager in business casual attire any day.
right.
we should probably, talk about, for the actually people out there, we should probably talk like some legal and some insurance things if you are going to work from a small space, whether that is your garage, whether that is a small office or a spare bedroom, or even if you go out and get a storage unit. But one, uh, make sure that if you've got inventory at home, you've got business tools and things like that, make sure that you are properly covered. Okay. Sometimes your homeowner's policy will have a rider on it that can cover X amount of business inventory and business property. Make sure you're talking to your agent if you want that kind of coverage, or make sure that your BOP, your business owner's policy, has the right kind of coverage. All right. You also want to make sure that let's say that something from your business caused any damage to your home, that your homeowner's insurance is not going to negate any kind of claim. So you leave that bottle of Roncinol lighter fluid next to your heat gun, and you go out for lunch and it burns down the house, which it's not a nice picture to think about, but is that going to be excluded from your homeowner's policy? If so, you need to know that kind of thing. All right. What happens if someone comes in and burgles you? Burgle is when you're away from home, right? I believe.
I'm not
Uh,
sure.
but someone comes in and steals all of your inventory. How is that going to be covered? How are you going to be put back together for that? And then finally, and this may be the worst, uh, check with your homeowners association. And I only say this because you're going to have somebody who is going to give you a hard time if you're in a homeowners association and you've got 37 boxes being delivered every single day. If you're doing online arbitrage, someone is going to get upset. So you want to have the ammunition to fire back at those Chads or Karens. No offense if your name is Karen. It's just it's a colloquialism, more than anything. But you want to be able to push back if necessary, or be ready to go to the mattresses with the homeowners association, because I am 100% for that. Nobody should be able to tell you that you can't run a business out of your home.
Yeah, and always the line is, it was either this or I learned to play the drums. So
Right?
that always give them some perspective.
Yeah.
We're talking about the legal and whatnot, but we are certainly not professionals. We're not giving legal financial advice or anything like that. But um, you may need to talk to the person that does your taxes too,
Hmm.
um, because depending on how you have it set up, a certain percentage of your home is used for your business, and that potentially has some positive tax implications. Um, because we're talking about making this easier. So make sure we probably shouldn't finish an episode without mentioning that. Um, and Also, we touched on mindset and productivity. We're kind of touching our greatest hits. If we are touching on the greatest hits, uh we should talk about networking too.
Hmm.
Um, you know what, Chris, you just had your holiday get together,
Hmm.
where a bunch of sellers all came together. I know you lined up potentially a couple new podcast interviews, which I'm real excited to talk to them. There's some interesting stuff, um, off the expected path kind of stuff. So I'm
Hmm.
looking forward to that. But that is I only mention that because that's a small example of the value of getting together and talking to other Amazon sellers. And I bring that up in this episode because once you get to the point where you need to expand, the opportunity may come where you and another seller that you network with may be able to split the cost of something.
Hmm.
You know, we mentioned the disparity between storage units. You can get them for about $50 around here. Sounds like closer to 150, 200 a month where you're at, right, Chris?
Yep.
Um, so it may be the type of thing where you and another seller kind of go in on it, and you'd want to make a some sort of agreement, some sort of contract, to make sure one side isn't treated more unfairly by the in the agreement than the other. But and you can walk that concept all the way up to warehousing. You know, you can eventually get to the point where you split a warehouse with a couple sellers or one other seller. So um, yet another on a long list of benefits of networking.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. There's so many benefits from networking. Um, I want to step back just 1 second and talk about those tax implications you brought up. And of course, you need to go and talk to your CPA. But there are some big ones. There's a home office deduction, which they say raises a lot of red flags, but really probably going to only be if you're have making over $1 million a year. But then the other thing is does your CPA know what the Augusta rule is? And can your business rent your home out for a day each month to be able to, pass like if your CPA doesn't know what the Augusta rule is, probably time to look for a new CPA and take advantage of all those tax implications. But again, we're not CPAs, nor do we pretend to play one. I don't think I could be a CPA. That's ugh.
Yeah. I never
Uh,
even pretended to want to be one.
right. Uh, so today we've got two quotes, and I started with one, and then in the middle of the show, I was reminded about another, and so we're going to go through both of these quotes today because I think they're really great. And Chris, it was your statement about how uh, organizing is like a favor to your future self, which will make your present self happier with your past self. And Benjamin Franklin said, "For every minute spent in organizing, an hour is earned." And while that is probably not exactly true, I think that it is directionally correct. Because if you organize for a moment and then you need to find your pen tomorrow, how many minutes are you going to save when it's not under a stack of papers? Uh, Benjamin Franklin and his aphorisms are some of my favorite. He's got something for just about every area of life. Uh, but the second quote is from Peter Drucker, who is a management great. But he said, "There is nothing so useless as doing efficiently that which should not be done at all." And I would imagine that, and I'm guilty of this as well, but I would imagine that in every one of our businesses, there are probably a lot of things that could probably be stripped from your business process because they are not useful. Matter of fact, I've talked to one of the things in the Amazon business that um, is talked about quite frequently is leakage. We may not have employees who are taking inventory out the back door, but if you've got kids, you've got you've got people sneaking inventory out the back door. Your shrink may not be what Walmart's is, but it's there. Uh, but what we do have is we have retailers who are not sending us inventory all the time. Matter of fact, this just happened to us today, and had to struggle and find, what did we just get shorted? Did they cancel an item? Like, what happened? And that becomes tough. And when I have talked to some larger sellers, that's actually something that they've deleted from one of their business processes. Something that smaller sellers would spend hours doing, they've said that part of the business is not worth it. I'd rather lose $10 here as long as it's not happening, as long as you're not getting shorted 50 units, from one retailer. But if it's a onesie here and a onesie twosie there, it's not worth the time of going and chasing it down. It's
more worth the time of, getting your reimbursements from Amazon. So try to audit your business for things that you can remove, because addition is often found through subtraction. So anyway, that's what I've got for the week. This was a good episode. Thanks for bringing this one up, Chris. All right, guys, that's the pod for this week, and we will see you then. Have a good day, everybody. Thanks for listening to Clear the Shelf with Chris and Chris. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a screenshot on your phone and share to Facebook, Instagram, or your favorite FBA group, and be sure to tag me and let me know why you liked it and what you'd like to hear more from us in the future. Also, I'd like to give you some free gifts for listening. Head over to rabbittrailchallenge.com and repricerchallenge.com for some free courses to further your business. Thanks for listening.